Welcome to Spanglish Friends, the podcast for true beginner Spanish learners.
Hola amigos, I'm Val, your co-host and experienced Spanish teacher from Venezuela.
And I'm Em, your Australian co-host who's been learning Spanish for 10 years.
Our goal is simple, to get you confident listening and speaking in beginner Spanish with content you'll actually use in real-life conversations.
Join the Spanish Friends community by subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts and following us on social media at Spanglish_Friends. Let's get started.
Comencemos. Bienvenidos! Welcome back, Spanglish friends!
Yes, welcome back to our crash course series. How do I pronounce stuff in Español, in beginner's Spanish?
Today is part 2 of our series.
That's right. And the whole idea behind this 3-part series is that just in under an hour, you are going to be able to achieve what it probably took 1 to 2 years of your primary school years to achieve. And that is you are going to be able to pick up any text, whether this be a menu, some song lyrics. It could be the first page of Harry Potter in Spanish, and you are going to be able to pronounce every word correctly. You might not know the meaning of every word just yet, but you're going to start sounding like a native Spanish speaker.
If you haven't listened to part 1 of the crash course, we definitely recommend starting there. We talk about how Spanish is a phonetic language and how this helps us learn how to read and speak in Spanish so quickly. We talk about silent letters, and we also talk about the little accents found over letters in Spanish. What do they mean and how to pronounce words when you see one? So, if you need, hit pause and we will catch you once you've listened to part 1.
That's right. So we hope you're all ready to go with today's lesson.
Amazing. Em, tell us what questions are answering today about how to pronounce stuff in Spanish.
At the end of part 2 of our crash course series today, you are going to be able to 1, know how to pronounce the vowels in Spanish. Our vowels are our A, E, I, O, U's, the cornerstones of language. Number 2, you're going to be able to sing the alphabet in Spanish and spell anything in Spanish. However, we do take no liability for the quality of your singing. And number 3 is you're going to be able to identify letters in the Spanish alphabet that are pronounced a bit differently than they are in English, and you're going to know how to pronounce them.
So useful. Awesome, Em. Let's jump right into it.
Yes. So we know that Spanish is a phonetic language, right? It is pronounced like it is written. You pronounce every syllable of a word. But to pronounce words, you've got to know how to pronounce letters, right? The most common and important letters of the alphabet are the vowels.
That's right. Just like in English, the vowels are fundamental. They are the most frequent letters you hit on your keyboard. Vowels are essential in both English and Spanish because they form the core of syllables. Remember those building blocks of words, helping to distinguish words and ensure clarity in pronunciation.
That's right. That's right. So we know in English that the vowels are A, E, I, O, U. There's 5 vowels, but Profe Val, what do they sound like in Spanish?
Those are A, E, I, O, and O.
Okay, so right off the bat there are some similarities, but there are some obvious differences too. So let's break this down vowel by vowel. Okay, the good thing, as we've stressed before, is in Spanish, vowels are typically short, pure, consistent sounds. But in English, vowels can have many different sounds depending on the word. For example, the A in the word cat, ka, versus the A in car, car.
That's true.
The A is different there. But in Spanish, the vowels, like your A sound's going to stay the same in each word. So once you've learnt this once, we promise Spanglish friends, you've got this. You will know how to pronounce the vowels in every single word.
That's true. Spanish vowels are much simpler as each vowel has only one primary sound.
Yes. So let's go into what these primary sounds are. Let's start at the top of the vowels. Okay. A. What does the letter A sound like in Spanish? Is it the same as in English?
In Spanish, the A is pronounced as a clear, open A sound. So it would be A, similar to how you would say, for example, father in English. Example, casa, which means house, casa. Or you have another word like cama, which means bed, or mama, which means mom. All of them, they have the same pronunciation for the A.
I get it. Okay, great. So we've done the A, A. Now tell us, what does the E sound like in Spanish?
The E in Spanish is pronounced as a short, pure E. So the sound properly is E, similar to the English word of bed. Example, mesa, mesa, which means table, or elefante, which means elephant. And another one could be cena, cena, which means dinner.
Okay, when we see E, we're thinking eh. Okay, great. So we've done A, eh. Now, what does the I sound like in Spanish? I noticed that that was a bit different.
The I is pronounced as E, like in the English word machine. It's a pure sound, unlike the variety you have in English pronunciation of the I. In this case, E is always going to be E.
Okay, so it's pronounced like a double E sound. So this is the one we need to remember is different. Can you give us some examples?
Let's bring it to life with some examples. The word vino, which means wine. Another could be the verb to live, vivir. And another could be the word island, which in Spanish, isla.
Mhm. So that's really important to note. For example, that word isla is written ISLA, isla, but you don't say isla, you pronounce it as E, the double E, isla. So now every time you say the letter I, think double E sound. Okay, great. So now we know A, E, E. So now we need to jump into O, the O sound. What does the O sound like in Spanish, Val?
The O is pronounced again like a pure just O sound, okay? Similar to the sound of the English word hop. For example, you have the word flor, which means flower. You have another oso, which means bear, and oro, which means gold.
Okay, great. So we've got A, E, O, final letter U. Now, this one was a bit different when you said it earlier as well. What does the U sound like in Spanish?
The U is pronounced like in the English word would, for example. It's consistent, so would be O.
Okay, so it's that double O sound instead of U. Okay, so we need to look out for these letters I and U in Spanish because they're pronounced I and U, which is very different to what we would do in English. Could you give us some examples, Val?
Sure, we have the word luna, which means moon, luna. Another one can be uva, which means grape, or lunes, which means Monday.
Okay, I get it. And Luna is spelt Luna, but we're pronouncing it Luna, like as if it had a double O. That U makes that double O sound, Luna. Excellent. Very clear explanations. Very useful as a beginner. I just want to double check and make sure for our Spanglish friends before continuing. Do the Spanish vowels ever change their sound based on the word, or is this a consistent rule and pattern?
Here the answer is no. This is one of the great things about Spanish. The pronunciation of vowels is much more consistent than in English. Spanish vowels usually keep the same pronunciation no matter where they are in the word, which makes Spanish easier to learn in terms of pronunciation.
Yes, that's great.
And another common question as a beginner is what happens when I have two vowels next to each other in a word?
Yes. So what should we do, Prophet, if we see two vowels together, like for example, I and A or U and A? How do we pronounce things when there are two vowels next to each other?
The answer is also very simple. Two vowels together are pronounced separately, with each vowel getting its own sound. You sound out each letter, like the word, for example, earth, in Spanish, tierra, 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 and you pronounce each vowel. See how each vowel forms its own syllable, its own separate sound? Can you see it?
Tierra. So I'm doing the E, I, T, and the era with the E-R-R-A. Tierra. Perfect. Okay, fantastic. We know this has been a lot, so let's summarize it before we move on. Spanish vowels are clear, short, pure sounds, okay? The A, E, I, O, U, and it doesn't matter what word you see them in, the sound is not going to change. Once you've learnt the sound once, you know how to pronounce them. Now, what about the consonants? How do we pronounce the rest of the letters in the alphabet?
Let's get started with the whole abecedario, whole alphabet abecedario. What do you think?
Abecedario. Okay, let's go right back to primary school. We're going to walk you through the whole alphabet. Now, the good thing, Spanglish friends, is that the Spanish alphabet is in the exact same order as the English alphabet. Woohoo! Okay, your task, though, Spanglish friends, is to listen for those 5 vowels that we've discussed, the A, E, I, O, U, and then start to listen about some of the differences there are in other letter pronunciations. Don't worry, because we're going to break it all down afterwards.
How M is going to say the letter in English, and then I am going to follow this with the Spanish pronunciation. So M, let's start.
A,
A,
B,
B,
C,
C,
D,
D,
E,
E,
F,
F,
G,
G,
H,
H,
I,
I,
J,
J,
K,
K,
L,
L,
M,
M,
N.
N,
And there's a special letter here in Spanish.
which is ñ,
Ooh.
ñ, O,
P,
P,
Q,
Q,
R,
R,
S,
S,
T,
T,
U,
U,
V,
V,
W,
W,
X,
X,
Y,
Y,
and Z or Z.
Z.
Wow, what did you think, amigos? It's like same, but different, okay? And you might have noticed also that I had a pause there because there is a 27th letter in the Spanish alphabet, ñ, but we'll get to this in our next episode.
Just let's break it down with rapid fire answers.
Yes. First thing you probably noticed was the B and the V sounds. The B and the V sounds a bit similar. Val, can you break this down for us? Why are they similar sounds?
Sure, in Spanish, we really don't differentiate between the B and the V sounds, like the word, for example, vaca, which is for cow, starting with a V, may sound like to English speaker that it starts with B. The only big difference is that the V you'll pronounce with the teeth on your lower lip, and the B you'll say by closing both lips. An example of a B word in Spanish is beca, which means a scholarship, beca. And again, listen to me say vaca, which means cow, in comparison with beca.
That's right. And sometimes you'll hear people saying things like beca or vaca, and you'll be like, wait, hang on, is it a B or a V? But don't worry, because when you're pronouncing the B or the V sound, it really doesn't matter because they don't differentiate between these two sounds. So, key thing you need to know is that the B and the V sounds are interchangeable in Spanish. Okay, got it. Now, taught to us, we got to a, be, and then we got to se. What happened there, Val? The C started to sound like an S.
The short answer is with the letter C, when it's written before an E or E, the C sounds like an S. For example, as we learned in the word dinner, cena. But before an A, O, or U, it sounds like a K sound, as the word we learn casa, which means house. So it would sound ca, co, cu, se, si. Let me give you another words examples. We have ciudad, which means city, or cocinar, which means to cook.
Okay, so in summary, with the letter C, before the letters E and I, like you did with ciudad, spelled C-I-U-D-A-D, ciudad, it sounds like an S, but before the letters A-O-U, it sounds like a K sound in English, like cocinar. Then we had the de and the e in Spanish, that was fine, but what the heck happened when we hit G? What was this letter?
The G, the G has two different pronunciations depending on what vowels it's combined with. All right? With A, O, and U, it's going to sound, listen, ga, go, gu, the traditional English G sound. But if you put E or E, it's going to sound he and he. In this case, it turns to be like the traditional H sound you have in English.
Mm. Mm.
So this together, all the vowels would be ga, go, gu, he, and he. Let me give you words examples with ga, go, gu. Gato, cat. Gorra, cap. Words examples with he and he. Gente, people. Girasol, sunflower.
Okay, that's good to know. I've got that. I understand that. And if we continue with the alphabet, last episode we did the H, the H sound, and we know that that letter is silent. We recapped that last episode. So we did H, I, the E, and then we did J, which you pronounced Jota. Val, what's going on here with the Spanish J sound?
J, your J in Spanish, is always going to be pronounced as the H sound, like the word hello in English, okay? So this is going to be J. If you put J with all the vowels, this is going to sound ja, he, ho, hu. Let me give you words examples. Jugo, juice. Jirafa, giraffe.
Okay. And so that's why when we see things like Spanish names, for example, Jose, if you're
Don't
saying
say
no way,
Jose.
Jose, don't say Jose because it starts with a J. And we now know that every time we see the letter J in Spanish, we pronounce it like the H in English. You say Jose.
That's spot on, M.
We're on the home stretch here with letters. We've got one more letter to unpack this episode, and that is the Y sound. Val, that sounded like a very different letter.
Yes, the Y or the Y, you could also call it. You pronounce it as a letter E.
That's right. That's right. So we've discussed in the first two episodes of the podcast how E, the letter Y, just by itself in Spanish means the word and it's used as a joining word. Like we've said before in our conversations, ¿Cómo estás? Which means how are you? And then we've done the reply to that, which is y tú. And the E is written as the letter Y, just by itself.
Yes. Now, if you combine the letter Y plus a vowel, it would change a little bit. In this case, the sound would be ya, ye, ji, yo, you. Okay? Let me give you an example. Yate, yat.
That's right. So when we combine the Y, like YA together, it's not going to sound like ya, it's going to sound like ja. So the Y starts to take on the English J sound. This is amazing, amigos. In summary, to bring this section of our podcast all together, the C sound. The C sound in Spanish, the se, can sound like an S or a K depending on what vowels it's combined with. The G can sound like a hard G, like gato, or it can sound like an H sound depending on what vowel it's combined with. The J sound always sounds like an H in English. And finally, the Y sounds like an E. Just when it's written by itself, we know the letter Y by itself is an and joining word, or if it's combined with a vowel like IA or YE, it's going to make a J sound like ja.
Amazing summary, M. Thank you. I love it. We've covered so much. And next week, we are going to dive into that sneaky extra letter you alluded to. But I think this is enough for our brains to register at the moment. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Spanglish friends, you might be thinking, okay, Val and Em, like, thank you. I get what you say, but like, how do I start to use this? This is a lot of information.
Our brains are on fire. But don't worry, Spanglish friends. It's time to put everything we've learned today with a small practice conversation, as we always promise, and bring these sounds to life for you.
Awesome. So let's put it together with a practical conversation and set the scene. Let's just imagine Val and I are just ourselves. We're hanging out in a park, okay? En un parque. We're just chilling. We're having a conversation about what we're doing. We're going to continue building upon what we've learned in our past couple of episodes, but pay particular attention in this conversation to the word pronunciation, all the vowel sounds, and the consonant sounds of the se, the he, the jota, and the y that we've discussed today. Okay, are you ready, profe?
Sí, amiga, comencemos.
Hola, Val. Buenos días. ¿Cómo estás?
Hola, Emi. Bien, gracias. ¿Y tú?
Estoy muy bien, gracias. Voy al parque con mi bicicleta.
¡Qué bien! Yo llevo mi gorra porque hace sol.
Sí, y yo bebo jugo porque hace sol. Awesome, amigos. How did you go? Did you pick up some familiar words or sounds?
Again, don't worry if you didn't catch every word, okay? That's not the point. The point is that you are going to start listening and understanding Spanish conversations that you could use in real life.
That's right, and start catching the pronunciation of a few words too. So let's break down what we've spoken about. First of all, I use something new in today's conversation. Voy al parque en bicicleta, which means I am going to the park on my bicycle, on my bike. Voy al means I'm going, and then I said where I'm going, the parque, and I said how, en bicicleta, on my bike. And you'll notice the pronunciation of bicicleta, bicicleta. We pronounced every single syllable here.
Exactly. And I said, yo llevo mi gorra porque hace sol. Breaking the sentence down would be, yo llevo, I wear, mi gorra, my cap, porque, because, hace sol. It's sunny. And I knew to pronounce this word gorro, gorro, with a hard G instead of like jorro, which would be incorrect, as it's followed with an O, like words like gato is the hard G sound versus a word like gente, the word for people, which has this soft G sound, the G.
That's right. And finally, to end the conversation, yo bebo jugo porque hace sol. Now, the first thing I said is yo bebo, yo bebo. Now, see here, I didn't say yo bebo. I said yo because we know the Y-O sound makes the J sound in English. Bebo, I drink jugo, and jugo is spelt Jugo. And I didn't say jugo, I said jugo because we know that the J sound makes a H sound in English, jugo. So I said, yo bebo jugo porque hace sol. I'm drinking juice because it's sunny. Okay? That breaks down all of those sounds that we now should be becoming very familiar with, Spanglish friends.
Genial, amigos. Great friends. There are three important things we want you keep in mind and learn properly. The first is vowels are always going to have a consistent pronunciation. A, E, I, O, U. Pay attention to the I and the U, which are two very different sounds. Second, your J letter in Spanish is pronounced as J, J, and with vowels it will sound ha, he, ho, hu. Words examples, jirafa versus the Y, the Y sound with vowels would sound ya, ye, yi, yo, you, which take on the J sound you normally have in English. And third and last is the C and the G in Spanish changes based on what vowel you combine it with. C might sound like a K or S, and the G might sound like a hard G or He.
That's right. A great summary. And it's all about practice, right? So, Spanglish friends, our reto of today, our challenge of the week is to go and look up a Spanish word starting with the letter J, the letter jota. Pop it in the comments with your answer of what that word means. We would love to see what you find. And then we want you to practice pronouncing that word out loud, like Jose. We want you to not say Yo sé.
Amazing, Em.
And for our next episode, episodio 6, the last part of our crash course series into mastering your Spanish pronunciation, you are going to learn some more letter combinations as well as a unique letter in the Spanish alphabet. Now, after this, we promise that you're going to be able to pick up any menu, any book, any song lyrics, and you are going to be able to read every Spanish word out loud and pronounce every single word perfectly. You're going to have all the tools you need to do that.
That's a good promise. So excited. Muchísimas gracias, amigos. See you for part 3 of our crash course next week.
That's right. Ciao, ciao. Hasta luego, Spanglish friends.
Hasta luego. Thank you for listening to Spanglish Friends. We are both so proud of the time you're investing to level up your Spanish listening and speaking skills.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, follow us and give the show a rating wherever you listen to podcasts. Or even better, tell a friend about the show. It's how we can help even more people on their Spanish learning journeys and continue to grow our awesome, supportive community.
Don't forget to check out our socials, including Instagram and TikTok at Spanglish_friends for even more beginner Spanish fun.
Congratulations on taking another step today towards your Spanish learning goals. Ciao, Spanglish amigos. Until next time.
Hasta la próxima, amigos.